Hi, welcome to the Mindset. This is Christopher Feltner. We are on episode 23, and today we've got another one of our longtime homegrown. I hate to call you veteran because it makes people sound old sometimes, but but with us we do have a special guest from one of our own programs here in Grafton. If you would go ahead and introduce yourself and what you do here.
Absolutely. My name is David Alley. I work as executive director at our Psychiatric Residential Treatment Center in Cold Spring, Minnesota.
And Dave, I know that I was going to bring this up later, but I feel like you have one of the most distinct voices of anybody I've ever talked to.
Thank you. Thank you.
And like even when people talk about you and you're not here, they're always like, "Oh, I love Dave's voice." I was like, this gonna be like the perfect podcast. I was like, people that are just listening to it, they'll be like, "Oh, it's so smooth. Who's that guy?"
Well, thank you.
Yep, yep.
Appreciate that.
So if you would, to kind of kick us off, tell us a little bit of your background in the field, like what brought you here to it, and just kind of your journey.
Sure. Number one, I've been with Grafton organization for 39 years. When I first came, I was looking for a challenge, looking for something different. And I started at our Berryville Residential Treatment Center as a DSP, and figured I'll give it a couple months, see how I like it, and really fell in love. Fell in love with the kids, and then I fell in love with also the staff. It was kind of like a family atmosphere, and along with staying with Grafton. Before coming, I had no formal college education, but Grafton offered classes at that time with the local college and took several classes. Kind of used Grafton's tuition reimbursement, which is a great program,
Mm-hmm.
and actually got my undergrad degree and then also continued while I was working at Grafton to get my master's degree in strategic leadership. And that helped me also to grow within Grafton.
Mm-hmm.
Probably spent my first 9 years at our Berryville campus and then also worked in our Winchester program, which has our community based group homes and a private day school and also an adult program. With that, I also started working with our Richmond program,
Mm-hmm.
helping them out. Spent some time in our Richmond program, doing the same thing with the community based group homes, private day school, and adult program. My main focus was on case
Mm-hmm.
management services, and really enjoyed meeting with the children, the families, and also working with the agencies and realizing that everyone had the same common goal for the treatment of the child, working together, getting the child through treatment. And one of the biggest things is the discharge planning, making sure when the child came back to the community had the resources for the child and the family to make it a positive transition where the child can reintegrate with the family and not need services like this. Um, and then eventually, I had the opportunity to come to our Minnesota program. I came out originally as just like an extra support and really enjoyed the team here, the children, and kind of like when my time was going to be up here, I was like, I don't know. And so then I was fortunate to get the executive director position here last
Mm-hmm.
year. And so I've been able with Grafton is to be able to work within um, all of our departments pretty much,
Mm-hmm.
except for the EI program, of course. But and I love that you doesn't matter what region you're working in, you still have that type of care for the kids.
Hmm.
And not just the kids, also the staff, and caring for the whole team.
Right. So I would say probably the majority of my time at Grafton, you've been in case management. Um, what's been some of the differences between being in case management and community-based programs versus now being an executive director of a PRTF?
Good question. Because I feel like I've brought to it is I can never forget those case management experiences.
Hmm.
A lot working with a child that's coming in enrollment, and also working with the family. Even as the executive director here, I still make contacts with families. And then also, I like to, before children enroll here, even as the executive director, you will see me there at the child, what we call the child's pre enrollment meeting.
Hmm.
That's where the child has been accepted, and we have a date for the child to come in, and where I have the family, the child, and the agency to get to meet who's that child's team is going to be here at Grafton.
Mm.
And I like for that family to know who's going to be working with their child before they come that day one.
Right.
There's a lot of anxiety with families, which, my child too, I would have a lot of anxiety, and
Hmm.
also the child. Um, but during that meeting, I see where families' anxieties lessen, because during that meeting, I have staff ask what I call mommy questions to the family. And that's questions, they've read the file on the child, but not everything about that child is
Right.
documented. And so this, we like to ask the family, does your child like to have a nightlight on at bedtime, stuff that you would not find in there? And so then the day of enrollment, assure the family that they're part of the treatment,
Hmm.
and make sure it's set up that connection with the family through family engagement day one.
Hmm.
So a lot of what I learned in case management, I'm also brought with me into the executive director role.
Mm. How has it been? You know, you've been in Winchester for such a long time, had all those relationships built. How's it been kind of going from scratch in a completely different state, building that rapport with your team and all?
Oh, I love it. When it first came out here, uh, all new faces,
Hmm.
very few people I knew before, and really tried to spend the first month or so trying to see how their program worked,
Hmm.
who was doing what, how the operations were going. And a big focus was I spent time with the kids. When
Yeah.
I came out here, you would see me here on weekends playing bingo with the kids. And I figured the best way for me to know the program is to get to know the kids first.
Hmm.
And so I would spend a lot of time on weekends and evenings building the rapport with the children, and then with the operating team, actually to include the direct care staff, finding out what their needs are.
Hmm.
I wanted to find out what the needs of the children were, what the need of the direct care staff were, and what were the needs of the operations team.
Hmm.
And with the operations team, looking at that time is when you're in a different state, there's all different licensing requirements.
Right.
So trying to navigate with them through a different state's licensing requirements. And so I'd say it took a good few months,
Hmm.
and to feel like I was adding a contribution to the program.
Hmm.
And the one real thing I like about this program here is it's still in its infancy. It's a
Right.
young program, whereby our other programs are established programs. well-known programs, and the program here in Minnesota is still fairly new
Hmm.
and coming off the ground, and um, each year looking at growing more and more. And then also, I participate in a lot of state meetings here in Minnesota to see what the needs are. What are the community needs
Hmm.
for mental health care out here? And you see, you still have a lot of adolescents in hospital beds,
Mm.
and working with the group. How do we get these children out of hospital beds?
Right.
So while we're growing, looking at additional services and looking at possible group home settings for children. Currently, right now, with our psychiatric residential treatment facility here, we are the only ones in the state of Minnesota that takes children with a lower developmental disability with also a psychiatric diagnosis.
Mm.
The other RTCs do not take children with like a lower IQ, which it was a need for in Minnesota.
Hmm.
These are some of the kids that were sitting in hospital beds. And along with that, is Minnesota has a great program that's called Positive Support Rule, in which it looks out for those children,
Mm.
monitors those children, realizing going into a treatment center and the child and having a lower IQ. And so with that, with our licensing and following the positive support rule, in addition, here we do additional trainings to meet that standard. All new employees have a minimum of 8 hours additional PSR training.
Mm.
And depending on the role, if it's a therapist or manager, it could be up to 14 hours, even before. This is on top of the weekly new orientation
Right.
and with our program here to make sure we can comply. Um, so it's also just keeping a pulse. What are the needs of the state of Minnesota?
Hmm. So how about you've been at Grafton before Ukeru and after Ukeru, and obviously Winchester has been fully integrated, restraint free, and everything else for several years. Berryville without seclusion, long time, very low restraints. How how do you help enhance Ukeru's comfort versus control approach in Minnesota?
It's with that, it's the children that we serve here.
Hmm.
Of course, it's all Ukeru based. The staff, a lot of times, what we do just out of the orientation where they get trained in
Hmm.
Ukeru, we have refreshers. A lot of times, the managers will have before the shift starts, the
Hmm.
team comes together, and frequently the manager will take different techniques from Ukeru. It's just like a refresher
Hmm.
with it, and because a lot of employees during the new orientation training,
Hmm.
it's a lot of trainings thrown at them,
Oh yeah.
and just retention coming from that. And we believe that Ukeru is one of the strongest trainings, and it's something we want staff to be able to retain, feel comfortable with as well.
Hmm.
So we do have regular trainings with it, regular practices, and employees are asked, anytime they would like to go back through a refresher or just some components of it, we will set that up for them.
Gotcha. One thing we found in our own programs, we see it on the road when we do training consultation and, schools, facilities, everything else, is how do you get staff to see Ukiru as more than just the blocking?
Mhm.
Like, what are some tricks of the trade that you've learned over the years to that if someone is watching this and being like, man, how do I get my staff to think about, when you're using comfort versus control, that's Ukeru. How you're interacting when things are going well, keeping them engaged, considering their needs. Like, how do you foster that mindset?
Exactly, role
Yes.
modeling on the unit, and also making sure others are role modeling it.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's a frequent conversation that we will have also in rounds, especially comfort versus control. What does it mean to this client versus this other client?
Mm-hmm.
And staff, I feel like our MHTs here love to invest in that, look at the time in that, because they know that's going to, number one, comfort the child,
Mm-hmm.
make their job a lot easier. And also, you want to come away feeling good when you use comfort versus control. That staff feels, walk away like a win.
Right.
It's you help that child and just seeing the benefits of that. And also like to keep those concepts and make sure they're in the child's treatment program.
Mm-hmm.
So when staff are reading, if a child would exhibit a certain behavior, do this, make sure it's in there too.
Mm-hmm.
And so the treatment plan, well, Ukeru is complementing the treatment plan.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's all one, not two separate things.
Right. Well, that's something we really try to get across in training. We talk about the 4 R's of a trauma informed approach, right? Recognize, respond, all of that. And I feel like the one that a lot of times falls through the cracks is the third R, responding by putting this knowledge into policy, procedures, practice, right? As I try to tell people, if you don't take what you learn in Ukeru and use it to shape how you do business, I mean, training alone doesn't fix anything, right? If you don't try to implement and truly embed that into your mindset and culture, then I always kind of joke, but it is true. Ukeru is basically a nice talk with some exercise at the end of it, right?
Exactly. And exactly. And just along with that, Chris, is, you know, making sure staff feel comfortable with it, doing
Mm-hmm.
it, and give them the feedback.
Right.
Hey, you did a great job with
Yep.
that. And staff will remember that and continue that. Or, if there's some, feedback, constructive feedback needed, have that conversation,
Mm-hmm.
but we're not making the staff feel like they did something wrong. We're
Right.
saying, it's just a training. And so that's when we are investing in our staff. And one thing we do in investing with our staff is also making sure that they're comfortable with Ukiro using it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and because that's going to help them a long ways in this field,
Mm-hmm.
even if they chose, 3 months later to go into another mental health field. That's something they could take with them for their whole
Mm.
life.
Right. Now, something I want to talk about. You said you've been with Grafton 35 years?
39.
39. Oh, wow. Shortchanged you.
Yes.
What have what has been the evolution you've seen, not just in terms of programming, but even for yourself, as someone working in the field before Ukeru was around and then since?
It was night and day. When I first came to Grafton, you're trained as a direct care staff, and some of the things you question, like, should we really be doing this? But when I started was back in 86. So in 80s, there was a lot of different thoughts, different philosophies.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I've noticed throughout my years is Grafton is always staying on top with movement changes, especially treatment with children. And
Mm-hmm.
it's all been in a positive way. Grafton will see or hear or do some type of therapeutic changes, environmental changes. And Grafton has always been ahead of the game.
Hmm.
And I feel like Grafton never accepts, hey, we're doing good right now. Let's stay where we're at. It seems like Grafton is constantly striving to improve on any type with the treatment planning, the environments, all of it. And but the big thing when Ukeru came around, um, I was fortunate enough to be on Kim Sanders' operating team at the time
Hmm.
and within our Winchester program. Uh, we talked a lot in ops about Ukeru, and then once it came time to start implementing it, we knew we just couldn't talk about it. You know, bring
Hmm.
everybody to class, hey, this is what you're going to do.
Right.
Because at first, staff were really fearful.
Hmm.
They were like, oh, you're just going to let kids beat us up. You're going to let kids beat each other up
Hmm.
or self interest. Like, no. So what we did, we actually outside of the class, we worked in the classrooms, and then we also had a rotating schedule to work evenings in the group homes. So we were the ones implementing a lot of the Ukeru, so staff could see and feel they felt a lot more comfortable seeing what we were doing versus them having to jump in a situation
Hmm.
and respond with it. And I really seen where that eased a lot of um, staff's attention with it. But it was like, once that changeover, and I started looking at thinking about what I call the old days before that, looking at how if I was involved in a restraint, I was fortunate I didn't have to have that many restraints. Mostly it was when I came in
Hmm.
to help support, but I always felt like I could talk to the child before it got that far.
Hmm.
But the ones I did participate in, I realized how I felt traumatized by it
Hmm.
and how the kid did. And then you got to think about the other children witnessing it, the
Right.
other staff. There was no win at all for anybody. And it was, you just led to an event where the child, um, we were just set back his treatment in good ways. And also the staff and injuries. Um, Children injured, staff injured. Um, and then when Ukeru came around, after about 6 months, everyone, you could see the ease on people's faces. You didn't have to think about, oh, I'm going to work today or tonight and I could be in restraints and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Then you wore, your worst clothes possible to work, thinking you'd be in a restraint or something. But it's just, and that's when you start to see a lot more happy, a lot more happy clients, staff. I always say if you go into a facility and you don't see smiles on children's faces, you know something's not going right.
Yeah.
And I think here at Grafton, when you go into the different regions, you see the children smiling. And I think a lot of it is on the treatment that they receive here,
Hmm.
the care they receive from the direct care staff. And so that was a game changer when
Yeah.
Ukeru come around.
Okay. So how about for you? You've been in Winchester for so long, and to go from Winchester, Virginia, to Cold Spring, Minnesota. Tell me just what, for, forgetting Grafton for a moment, where you work, just life moving from Winchester, Virginia, to Cold Spring, Minnesota. Like, how was that?
Yeah. And I moved last December.
Hmm.
And so I got to experience my first Minnesota winter. Uh, I went and stocked up on jackets, long johns, everything possible.
Yeah.
Still froze.
Mm.
Uh, but what got me, I would be driving to work and it's minus 30 degrees. And, I'd come in complaining and, people here say, oh, this is a mild winter. I was like, what? So I'm waiting for this winter coming up.
Sheesh.
But one thing I got to say to all of my friends from work in Virginia, we stay in touch and really miss those guys and miss the kids that I was working with there.
Hmm.
And I hope that they've all moved on to their next adventure. But that goes back to one thing is about the staff you find at Grafton.
Hmm.
And when I said earlier, kind of like a family atmosphere, you really rely when you're working like direct care and even in administration, you rely on your coworkers.
Yeah.
You get to know your coworkers very well. You make some really good relationships, and I still stay in contact with people that I met in the late '80s when I started, and some of them are still here at Grafton working.
Hmm.
But you make a lot of relationships along the way.
Oh, absolutely. Well, especially when you go through hard times together, it's hard not to, right?
Uh, you go through those hard times, good times,
Hmm.
and
So, kind of thinking about the field at large, right? So much has changed from, the 1400s where basically folks like we serve in our settings would be in asylums, right? And in hospitals and in warehousing and, containment and now treatment and, the shift from control to trauma informed treatment and everything. Being in the field, seeing 39 years of history, if you had a crystal ball, what do you think are some things that will be different in the next 39? Or some things that you hope are different in the next 39?
what I hope's different. And also, I talked about this with the Speaker of the House here in Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
I had an opportunity to visit with her. Is my biggest thing is getting these kids out of these ERs, sitting in
Mm.
ERs. We still have children sitting there for a month
Wow.
before finding placement. So my kind of goal right now with the crystal ball is my focus has been here now in Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I got myself embedded and wanting to support this community, and that is continuing to grow facilities, have facilities for children and the families
Mm-hmm.
that emphasize what Grafton emphasizes. We want that family and that community all to stay together.
Mm-hmm.
We also want that child only to be in short term treatment. And how do you work with that to ensure that once a child leaves, you've got an effective discharge plan that's going to keep that child at home or to a foster parent and
Mm-hmm.
in school where you feel comfortable. And we do our post discharge surveys, checking in with the families once a month for 6 months. But looking at my crystal ball and what my hopes are is to get these children out and also remove the stigma from families with that. Are you having children in services, mental health
Mm-hmm.
services, and all? And I do think the state of Minnesota is taking a positive direction right now. So that's my goal to continue that.
Gotcha. Okay. Something I've been thinking about, in terms of the future of our field and just looking at, different industries. AI is obviously a big thing that people talk about these days. Um, And reality is we've been experiencing it in different doses and everything from advertising to, you're talking to somebody in a car. Next thing you know, on your social media account, you're getting ads for something you were talking about. You're like, wait a minute.
Absolutely.
Right. But even, just this past 6 months, for the first time, I used ChatGPT. I was like, I'm going to see, what it's all about. So I asked it some questions, and it is impressive. Like, it gets basically does all the searching for you in a lot of ways. The quality of it, you still have to use some discernment with. But I got thinking, as that type of stuff develops, how could that be used in our field, right? Because you think about, so many industries where machines and, computers and stuff have replaced workers. You really can't do that in direct care, right? Unless unless they create cyborgs or some sort of robots, whatever it may be. But I was thinking, what if at one point it could get so sophisticated where you take someone's diagnoses and elements of their history and stuff, and it generates like treatment plans. You know,
That's what I was thinking.
yeah, I was like, that could be interesting.
It could. How to best, because I really feel like each individual's is different,
Mm-hmm.
separate, but I would love to see like AI, like you said, with the diagnoses, other information,
Mm-hmm.
how to best serve that individual
Mm-hmm.
that's different from others. Not
No,
that one,
absolutely.
one thing fits all. But yeah, when I look at AI, and I have to admit, I'm really new to it,
Mm-hmm.
but that is the one thing uh, that has intrigued me. Could it be possible,
Mm-hmm.
to help guide treatment?
Something I was thinking about recently, with Apple Watches, right? And things like that, smartwatches. Well, when watches first came out, they were very simple, right? Very simple. And then when it became digital, it's like, ooh, I'm fancy. I got a digital watch. And now, they can take your blood pressure, your heart rate, measure your sleep, and everything else. And I was thinking, about different things we talk about with the neurology around trauma. Um, Difference in the prefrontal cortex development, cerebral cortex size, ventricles, amygdala, all of that. How fascinating and useful that would be if maybe there was like a sleeve with sensors that you could have someone put on their head. And it just automatically gets you a scan. And now we can actually see the neurology of the brain and be like, okay, so if their amygdala is like this is the stuff we need to do and not do. And,
That'd be awesome.
so I think it could be useful. Um, you know how we do. We For everything useful, we come up with three bad things, and everything else. But it would be interesting with it. So,
It would be. And I guess that would go back to my crystal ball.
mm-hmm.
I would love to see something like that.
Mm-hmm. So Dave kind of finished things off. 39 years in the field. This is type of field where I feel like people are either in it for the long haul or not very long at all, right? And that's kind of the mystery, especially with hiring, with training, HR, everything. It's what is it that makes some people stick and other people they don't, regardless of degrees and everything else. What has kept you in this field?
I guess I would say like a passion. I'm thinking about when I first started, there's 4 or 5 people, or 3 or 4 people
Mm-hmm.
that started right with me at the same time and that are still here. And when I look at myself and when I look at them, the things I see is just the passion, the bereavement in Grafton
Mm-hmm.
is another huge one. Um, I've always felt treated very well by Grafton, and um, and I loved how the reason why I stayed was the challenges
Mm.
because Grafton, I was very fortunate. Grafton has allowed me to do different positions, different jobs throughout my career, helped train me, and it just I was adding like everything up,
Mm-hmm.
everything Grafton was going. I was adding it up, and but I believe the big thing is the passion and realizing that Grafton is a good employer and they will give you the challenges that you want.
Mm-hmm.
And they will always stay with me. Yeah,
All right. Well, I think that's a awesome place to end, Dave. I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me here today. Yep.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep. And thank you all for tuning in. This was episode 23 with Dave Alley. Thanks again.